Hi, my name is David Hurley. You may have heard of me from contexts such as running political campaigns, commenting on politics on the CBC, or my recent podcast, The Herle Burly. But professionally, I'm a public opinion researcher, a pollster. Part of opinion research is a thing called a focus group, a facilitated discussion. I've moderated hundreds, maybe thousands of these. They're extraordinarily valuable in understanding how people think about issues. They reveal true intensity of feeling, candidness, what words and constructs people use when talking about an issue or a politician, the strength of an argument to persuade. Marketers and political parties have used focus groups for years to shape their strategies and communications. Now Air Quotes Media is bringing them to you. Through the Looking Glass, presented by Telus, is a show that uses focus groups to show you how important issues are being conceptualized, thought about, expressed by ordinary Canadians. Hands up if you've seen that image.
I don't think it's all hockey and Tim Hortons.
We're going through genocide and we're still paying taxes.
Many of us now live in silos of our own creation, silos that prevent us from hearing and understanding where people are coming from. You'll see exactly where they're coming from on Through the Looking Glass. No filters, just real talk. I'd like to start by getting to know a little bit about each of you. And I'll go along the order of what my screen is. And so I'm going to start with, I'm not sure, is that Sony or Sunny? How do I pronounce it?
Sony.
Sony?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Sony. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you doing?
Very well. Where do you live?
I live in Brampton.
Yeah? And what do you do for a living?
I'm an information counselor, so I help newcomers settle into the country a little bit easier.
Okay. Do you have a family, or are you single, or?
Yeah, I have a family. I have 2 children, both teenagers, 16 and 14.
Cool. And what are your interests?
My interests are I enjoy reading, I enjoy watching TV, and just spending time with my family and friends.
Awesome. Okay. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Tara.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi, Tara. How are you?
I'm well. It's actually Tara.
Well, hi, Tara. Okay.
It's okay. It's a common error.
We'll get that right. Tara, where do we find you today?
So I'm in Halifax now, but I live in Oakville normally. I'm on vacation right now. I'm a teacher. I have 4 kids from 21 down to 14, and I am separated from my husband, ex-husband.
Okay. And what are your interests?
Anything outdoors. So hiking, walking, swimming, water, boating, all of those.
Well, hence why you're in Nova Scotia.
Right, exactly. It's where I'm from. It kind of comes with it, right?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful province.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. Cece, what's your story?
Hi, I'm Cece, located in Vancouver, and I'm senior project manager for one of the telecommunication company. My interests are traveling abroad mostly. I actually haven't had much chance traveling within Canada because it's just so much cheaper to fly to the States or Asia, or, it just make a lot of sense. But obviously for the past year and so haven't been able to travel.
Traveling in Canada is incredibly expensive.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's the same price going to Toronto. It's almost the same price as going to Asia.
Right. Toronto's nice, by the way. I would recommend it to you.
I would love to go, and unfortunately, I heard from some of my colleagues that hasn't been open up fully. So still contemplating. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Carol, you're next on my screen.
All right. Well, I'm from Mission, BC, so not too far from CC, about an hour away from her. Small little community, nice little place. As far as interests go, I am mostly interested in cooking, as I was a Red Seal chef for 20 years. I've retired and moved into sales because there's way more money. So it's what it is. As Cece said, traveling was another big one for my wife and I. However, we can't do it, and I have coworkers in Toronto, and we don't go visit them because it is way too expensive.
More expensive than Vancouver. Too expensive
I
to
could
get
fly
there.
round trip to Mexico and back for a week for less money than it would cost to go to Toronto for less time.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Jane.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I I live in Vancouver. I grew up in Toronto, spent 20 years there, and escaped to the West Coast about 35 years ago. Stayed here, never went back.
Yeah.
I work in a local hospital in administration, and my interests are swing dancing, skiing, yoga, and traveling.
Swing dancing.
Swing dance.
Where does that come from?
Well, the type of swing dancing I do is called West Coast swing, and it actually originated, it's the state dance of California. So I travel around and I go to weekend conventions and competitions throughout the Pacific Northwest.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah. When you've got 1,000 people together who all love to dance over a weekend, we'll dance till 4, 5, 6 in the morning till our feet are screaming, go to bed, get up and do it all over again.
All right, people, we've got a party with Jane at some point. Antonio.
Hi there. I'm here in Burnaby, British Columbia, so another West Coaster with the other three. I'm got a family with the oldest 27, the youngest 9, family of 4. I'm a longshoreman electrician here at the ports of Vancouver for ILWU. I love outdoor activities, snowboarding, mountain biking, hiking, kayaking, anything fitness related like that. Spend time with the family outdoors.
I think if you live in BC, it's the law that you have to like outdoor activities. And am I going to pronounce that Yi?
Yi, yes.
Hi,
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very well.
Yeah. So I also live in Vancouver, West Coast. I love the outdoors, as you guys say. And I enjoy hiking, I enjoy yoga, and I enjoy photography.
Beautiful. Excellent. And Dragon.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone. I'm a former Vancouver resident. I lived there for 7 years. Before I moved to Ontario, my family was missing me. But I love the Vancouver. I used to live in Richmond, Burnaby, and the last place, New Westminster. But I live now in Mississauga. I work in the airport as a customer service manager. And I started as a customer service ticket agent, now later become a manager. And I love outdoors a lot. When I was in Vancouver and even now here in Ontario, I practice a lot of, I like outdoors. I like being outside, spending time with my family. And I also enjoy traveling to Europe. And I love to visit Australia one day and Brazil, which I've never been there. But I love everything outdoors. I spend time... when I'm not outdoors, I like listening to a variety of music, from smooth jazz to funk to all kinds of variety of music, except I'm not country, but I love watching sports. That's about it.
All right, Dragon. I'm going to have to fight you on both country and new jazz, but we'll do that a different time. Smooth jazz, we're going to do that at a different time. So everybody loves the outdoors, so I'm going to try not to keep you locked in here for too long.
It's smoking outside right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing this every week, so we're going to get to know each other pretty well over this period of time, and I'm really looking forward to that. Let me start by just asking a question, and I'd like to see a show of hands. It is alleged that the Prime Minister Trudeau is going to call an election tomorrow. How many people had heard that? Everybody's heard that there's going to be an election tomorrow. Somebody tell me how you feel about that.
Well, I'm not happy about, them always playing games with the fixed dates. It's a fixed date, but no political party really sticks to it, whether it was the Conservatives, the Liberals. So, a little... especially if it's going to be a snap election, that it's going to be like in less than a month. That seems, let's rush through the door and get it done and grab power and stuff. So it's a little frustrating after only a couple of years have to go back and the country has to spend, half or $500 million, whatever it's going to cost to run another election when we're already throwing cash out the door with everything else that's going on. So,
right. Anybody else? Yeah, Jane.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings. On the one hand, yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the neck, but on the other hand, I understand it's a very strategic move. And here in BC, Premier John Horgan did something similar last fall. I see it right now. Obviously, the federal Liberals are a minority, and it's strategically a good time for them to try and get the majority. I think sometimes they're stifled on some of the legislation that they want to bring through, and that can be very frustrating. They're relying on the NDP and the Conservatives to help push things through, and I know Aaron O'Toole can stall some things. So from that point of view, I understand why they're doing it. And it was the same thing here in BC. Everybody groaned when John Horgan called the provincial election. But on the other hand, people got out to vote. We got it done. And because of mail-in voting, it wasn't that bad.
Tony, you ever thought about this election? How do you feel about the fact that there's an election going on?
I agree with, I think, Jane and Antonio. I do have mixed feelings about it, just regarding, we just had one a couple of years ago, and just to put themselves in majority, it seems like a big cost for Canadians to spend over $500 million just to kind of move their, agendas or their legislation through. So I'm kind of on the fence about it right now.
Does anybody feel it's dangerous to be holding this election because of the pandemic? Yeah, Cece?
Yeah, just thinking about the timing, like we are expecting a wave 4. So just from a timing perspective, I feel like the government is putting their own interests ahead of the public. I really think that they should be focusing on, making sure that COVID is under control first before calling the elections.
Right.
Okay. I can comment on the COVID comment on that. I would think that the government would also perhaps want to pull the election based on the vaccination rate. It is fairly high, but also at the same time, they might be looking at different areas saying, well, this area is pretty low and it's a conservative riding. We should definitely get that election in because less of them will head out. If they're unwell. And it would be a little foolish to think that they haven't at least thought about it.
That's an interesting comment. Yeah, maybe that's something they're planning or already thinking.
I've heard Americans talk like that all the time.
Daryl brings the cynicism right off the bat.
It wouldn't be unheard of, though. You always hear these attack ads. They're always like this, and they're always negative. And what's to say that they hadn't thought about something like that? They're already playing dirty.
Okay. So
I believe the current government is trying to take advantage of this pandemic. The reason for saying that is that because they spend so much money during the pandemic, and that is because of the pandemic, they can spend money as much as they can. So they want to use this, take advantage of that, and get more votes.
Right. Okay, to set a baseline for me, can we just go person by person? And I'd like you to answer this question, which is, which party do you think it is likely you will vote for? And which other parties are you considering voting for at this point in time? Dragon, can you answer that for me first?
Undecided now, for now, but not Liberals, between Conservative and NDP. Not Liberals this time.
Okay. Sony.
I'm kind of leaning towards voting towards the NDP. I'm liking what they're saying. I've liked what Jagmeet Singh has been talking about. So probably maybe the NDP, and then if Conservatives second.
Okay. Why not the Liberals, just out of curiosity, Sony?
I've just kind of getting, I don't know, maybe exhausted from with their platform, with sometimes some of their broken promises or the way they're doing things. I don't quite agree with some of the way they, bring out their issues on their platform. So I think it's maybe time for a switch to, new ideas, new ways of doing things.
Okay. Daryl?
I'm kind of leaning liberal, more so. NDP following up with that. I lean away from conservatives because, generally speaking, they don't usually have a platform that supports the kinds of things that I'm looking for to help make my life better in the future.
Okay. Cece?
I'm leaning towards conservative, and second choice will be liberal.
Thank you. Tara?
Leaning towards liberal. I do like a lot of the things the NDP brought forward, especially as I'm in education. I do like, healthcare and those sort of things that they look at. Unfortunately, I don't think that they will win, which is a common one. And then we're left with that type of government again. I sort of feel like it's the lesser of two evils, being liberal or conservative. Otherwise, it may end up being that wasted vote. And I know that's not the right way to think, but that's sort of based on past is what it seems.
Wrong way to think. Yi?
No liberal for sure. And for the rest, I would look into their policy, what they are going to do.
Okay. Antonio?
I'm lucky here in Burnaby that we have a strong NDP riding, so I could probably vote NDP again and avoid a conservative person getting in. So I mean, if I had to, I would vote strategically to not have a conservative, and unfortunately that would probably mean a liberal because Green Party is kind of non-existent really anywhere. We do have a couple here in our provincial that do well, but other than that. So it's NDP is, for me, they hold close to what I want anyways, but so I can vote with them with a lot of confidence usually in my riding. So
cool. And Jane?
Yeah, federally, I'm a strategic voter. Provincially, I'm an NDP voter because I believe in the social programs that they present. Federally, I don't think the NDP will get a chance to run the government. So I'll definitely be voting Liberal because it more represents the values and that are similar to mine. And again, the social programs. I think it's the party that will do the best for the people. I don't want to see a change of party during the pandemic. I think the Liberals have done an excellent job with this pandemic, and I think they did a better job than the other parties would have done. So I'm quite happy with the Liberals right now.
Okay. So what I'd like to do now is have a little conversation with you about what are the things that you would like to hear politicians talking about for the next 36 days in this election campaign. What are the issues? What concerns you? What do you think is important? What's important to you? What's important to the country? However you view it. What are the most important things you're looking to hear from the leaders and the parties about in this campaign?
Well, I'll go first in the sense that I'm not really sure federally. My biggest concerns are healthcare and education, and those are provincially run. So I guess looking at federally what they are willing to contribute to assist in those two areas, especially now being from Ontario, it was awful. And if we look at our long-term care homes and the philosophy behind the hiring of people there, our education system, that was very poorly handled. So for me, I look at the provincial and what the Conservatives have done, and I have a really hard time with that. So overall, I think for me, it's getting people back to surviving for a lot of them, and businesses surviving, rather than the rich getting richer.
Interesting. Okay. Who else?
I got a couple of good ones. I think one of the things that I think is a big one is we need a game plan to recover financially from the COVID spending. There's a lot of money went out on CERB and other programs. Where are we going to come back from that? We're going to hear a lot of attack ads about how Trudeau spent a bunch of money, but every government would have, no question. So where are we going with that? And further to that would be how we're going to move forward with things like the housing crisis. a lot of problems in the Lower Mainland and West Coast. We have very little housing and very high prices. Same thing in Toronto, all over Ontario. So what's the plan for that?
Interesting. Okay. Who else?
Yeah, talking about the attack ads, those are a real turnoff for me. So, and that's already started. The Conservative Party put out a really ridiculous ad. I think it was today. That just, is seems to target the lowest common denominators. So I'm more interested. When parties do that, I turn them off. I want to hear what their platform is. I want to hear what they're going to be doing for the country. One of the things that interests me is the idea of a universal basic income, and that's something that the Liberals has been talking about. Also, the $10 a day childcare, I think, is very, very important, especially for the working women in this country. And I know some of the provinces have enacted that, and Justin Trudeau is working on that. It's very important. Like Tara said, healthcare and education, which are partially federally funded. Well, with the healthcare aspect, we did used to have facilities in Canada that could manufacture drugs. We're stuck in this situation now with the pandemic where we don't. And the reason for that is those facilities were sold off by Stephen Harper, the Conservative government, and left us high and dry without the ability to manufacture pharmaceuticals. So I think that's an idea also that the Liberal government is looking at bringing back. I think it's very important, as we've seen in this day and age where the producing companies are hanging on to their supply. So
thank you, Jane.
Thanks.
Okay, election 44 is on. The campaigns have kicked off. You've heard the opening speeches, judged the initial ads, and maybe, just maybe, you're casting a skeptical side eye on some early campaign commitments. Because there's promises, and then there's following through on those promises. Our presenting sponsor, Telus, doesn't just talk the talk that good business and doing good are inextricably linked. They make it so. Their Connecting for Good portfolio of programs, there's 4 of them, create meaningful change by bridging digital divides and ensuring Canadians in need get access to Telus' world-leading technology. Telus Internet for Good provides 200,000 low-income families in BC, Alberta, and Quebec high-speed broadband internet for only $9.95 a month. Telus Mobility for Good gives 20,000 youth transitioning from foster care a free smartphone and fully subsidized 3 gigabyte data plan for 2 years. Telus Tech for Good helps differently abled Canadians facing challenges using smartphones and tablets with customized tech solutions that help them live more independently. And Telus Health for Good provides mobile health clinics to bring primary care to people in need living on the streets in urban centers across Canada. And on top of all that, there's $1.3 billion in value, time, and financial support that the Telus team has contributed since the year 2000, all of which adds up to Telus being the most giving company in the world. You can find out more about it all at telus.com/connectingcanada. Tony, what's on your mind?
I think what's important for me is childcare. Working with a lot of different people, I know for working women, it's very important. Not having adequate childcare does hold them back from, gaining in their career, getting jobs. So that's something that is important to me. And also what Daryl said was about the economy. Because of COVID, the government has spent a lot of money. So kind of where does that money, where will it come from, or what will we have to kind of say bye to in order to make the books balance?
Okay. Sony, are you not impressed with the Trudeau government's childcare program?
I'm actually liking the childcare program. I'm hoping it becomes a reality for a lot of women so that they can have access to the $10 childcare.
Okay. Thanks. Dragon, what do you want to hear in this election campaign?
Yes, Daryl, David. Just like in Lower Mainland, the Fraser Valley of Vancouver in BC, we have a housing problems here in Ontario, especially in the Toronto area. We need more affordable housing. We have a lot of working people who cannot afford their rents. I have my friends in the same situation. I'm very concerned. I'm still upset about the government spending billions of dollars in the CERT program, sending the money to people who are not eligible, to millions of people who are not eligible, instead of investing that money in affordable housing and employment. So they wasted billions of dollars sending all that money to people who are not eligible in the first place. So, also create more jobs. And also we have, I'm concerned about the crime rates here in the GTA, in the Toronto area. We have more crimes than when I came to Canada back in the late 80s. So I'm, a lot of crimes going on in the Toronto area. So those are the most concern that I have. Hopefully they will do to decrease crime as well.
Okay. Anybody else who hasn't spoken, got something they want to add to this? Antonio?
Yeah, so I can echo a bit of what like Tara said and Daryl, for me here, it's, the healthcare, it's healthcare and dental care, like the NDP is proposing some, basic coverage for people. That's important. I think that, if there's a lot of people fall through the cracks, people don't have coverage through their work and stuff, it could be things that in conjunction with that, you get a basic level until you think. So I'd like to see some more of that social program being kind of a focus for taking care of Canadians. The housing market obviously is insane here in BC. I mean, I have 3 adult children. One moved to Calgary to get out of the lower mainland because of the price of rent and everything else. And the other ones, they struggle here. And it's just, I think it's just ownership of property should be something that should be attainable for Canadians, not unattainable, and having an unchecked marketplace, the housing marketplace, where the investments, it's used as a bankroll for a lot of offshore money to come in and just, expand their wealth and stuff, instead of it being for an attainable goal for Canadians. The daycare stuff is really important. I just wanted to say, I have a grandchild, and so my oldest, he has a kid, and so he's a single father. So I'd like to say that, when we reference daycare and stuff like that, we should be talking about parents, not just mothers, because there are single fathers who also, struggle. Like he has a job. It's hard for him to get his child to daycare and, find suitable daycare at a good price and pay rent. So let's just keep that conversation inclusive, if possible, for everybody. It's not just one side that takes care of their children, right? So,
Cece?
Yeah, that's a really good point about when we're thinking about single parents. So we lean towards the mother, but let's not forget about the father side of the parents. For me, it's definitely the economy. I think a couple of you guys mentioned earlier, the Liberals spent a lot of money during the pandemic, which I think a lot of it is very necessary to ensure that we have some I think the vaccines, right? And also some minimum income for people who lost their job very unfortunately during the pandemic. But unfortunately, that speed of spending is not sustainable. No government can sustain about just continue to spend without balancing the sheet. So I would like to know a little bit more about each party's tackle plan in terms of bringing us back to the kind of neutral page of the financial sheets.
Right.
Yeah,
I think you might have been the only person I haven't heard from you.
Yeah, so what I was looking for is I want to hear how the government is going to bring the economy back, and also how to create more job opportunity, because I don't like the idea to give out free money, because that will encourage people try not to go to work, because what they make may not be even more than what they can get the free money. And this happens a lot already in the workplace. So the office cannot find people to work, even though all these protection measures are in place, which is very frustrating. One side, the government is giving out free money, so people stay home for nothing but get money. But on the other side, a small business is struggling to find people to work. So that brings into a very bad cycle, I would say. So that is something I would like to hear how they are going to do.
Great. Yes, Jane?
Thanks. I just wanted to add a couple of things that have come to mind. As I'm sitting here in Vancouver in a heat wave with smoke coming from the interior, environment is something that's really important and needs to be kept on top of. So I'll be very concerned to hear what the parties say about that. And the other thing is universal pharmacare. I'm a strong proponent of that. So not only having our healthcare covered, but prescription drugs, dental and optical care. And I know that's something that's being talked about as well.
David, are you able to hear me if I lean back? It's just a funny, uncomfortable thing, leaning forward, for a long time. Are you able to hear me if I sit, are you able to hear me?
Not as well, Dragon. So sit back when you're listening, but if you're going to speak, it'd be great if you could lean forward just for when you're making your interventions. Okay. Right?
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. I wanted to make another point that you just reminded me, David, about now that we are going back, hopefully the economy had restarted. I see on TV and here on the radio, there are a lot of people, employers are looking to hire people, but people are not willing to go back to work. So that's very upsetting to me. There are jobs out there, but they are, rather than going back to work, they are collecting till October the CRB, and there are jobs. So that's very frustrating, David, to me. When I hear almost daily there are jobs out there, but employers have difficulty hiring people back, especially in the hospitality industry. So that's very frustrating.
So to those of you who raised that, let me say this. So the other people say about that if businesses aren't able to attract people to leave government assistance to come work for them, it's because they're not offering a high enough wage, and they should increase their wage to attract workers. What is your response to that?
I can speak to that. Being in the hospitality industry for over 20 years, often it is a money thing. For example, as a cook, I was making less money working than I did when CERB hit and we closed. It made more sense to take the CERB money than it did to try and work for not nearly enough. First, as one point. As another point, in a lot of hospitality places, especially the mom and pop places, I can speak from personal experience that about 80+% of the owners, you don't want to work for them. They run it, they're rude to their staff, they're hard on them. It's a really tough industry, and they don't pay them enough. And if minimum wage isn't making rent on 20 hours a week, why would you do it? It's offer more hours, have less positions, and give them full time.
I totally agree with that statement as well. I think even when I grew up, my part-time summer jobs were always full-time. I have 4 kids. Not one of them can find a full-time job. Like they're part-time, every single one. So they're paying for university becomes an issue. And then we look at, again, the long-term care homes. They won't hire those people full-time and give them their benefits that they need. So they're working 3-4 different places. And that's how come COVID became so easily spread amongst them. So to me, those are the bigger issues. I agree with you. Like the people working in the businesses, what are they providing for these employees to ask them to work for them, right?
Mm-hmm. And they cut them off on the hours too. They'll tell them, you can only do one part-time job. Right. If you go work at another place, we can't hire you. You have to be available.
Yi, what's your point of view?
I was thinking is if you ask for increase in minimum wage, then the price would be eventually transferred to the customer, and you will be one of the customers. So think that way.
Okay. Yeah, Antonio?
Yeah, so I mean, to Yi's point there, the one thing that always gets me about that aspect of it is that, when my parents came to Canada from Italy, they worked jobs, and they were able, with my dad working alone, my mom was at home. They were able to afford things. The dollar value of what our working value now is way less. So, a person making even $25 an hour now compared to the equivalent 30 years ago, our buying power is so less. So I think it's a great avenue for businesses and the government say, oh, well, we're going to have to raise prices, but how come so long ago all these other people could afford so much more on the same wage scale? Like when you look at the wage as a percentage of income and the cost of living, there needs to be a rebalance because our cost of living is so high that compared to what wages are, someone shouldn't be struggling when they're still people and they're making $27 an hour in a city like Vancouver or Toronto or anywhere with housing is expensive and the inflation, everything is your buying power is just not there. Someone making $100,000 or more even a year used to be able to live a lavish lifestyle. Now in Vancouver, that just you're surviving in the city making that type of money because of the cost of housing and fuel and everything else, all the other costs in life, right? So,
Cece, Antonio mentioned and are you of the view that inflation is a problem in this country, that goods and services that you rely on are rising in price faster than your income is rising in price?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially since the open of the pandemic, I definitely noticed everything has gone up from restaurants, like, things that we buy in everyday goods, gas price has gone up, which I understand supply and demand, right? And just like everyday household goods, like grocery, I noticed everything's going up, right? Like everyone's spending 10-20% more for the same amount of items that purchased before the pandemic. So I'm not convinced necessarily like increasing the minimum wage is the solution. I think it has to looking at two sides of the equation, right? Managing the inflation. Big part of that is for people who are rent is the housing market, either first home buyer or renters have to be sustainable. The second part is I think like looking at the wage, right? It's not necessarily increasing the wage because you mentioned earlier, eventually someone has to, bear the increase in the minimum wage. I don't necessarily think it's the business, it's the consumers, right? So I think it's looking at the government, how can we have more higher pay, more skill, specialized, high tech? That's the way to go in the future. How can we, attract more company coming to Canada and open up more higher pay and longer term jobs in Canada?
Yeah, I agree with CC completely. That's a more constructive way. Compared to you just simply increase the minimum wage. That is very short term, and eventually you're eat the consequence. You are the one who will bear the consequence.
Is the rising price of goods, is that the government's fault? Has the Trudeau government done something?
I would say part of it just spending money without any limitation, because bear in mind, you're printing out money and actually you don't have the real support for this much money, and the debt is going to be on you or your children or your grandchildren. Someone has to pay for it. There's never going to be a free lunch. You have to pay for it sooner or later.
Okay. Sony, do you blame the Trudeau government for inflation, rising prices of gas and groceries?
No, just because I think because of the pandemic, we've had so many, restrictions with goods and services coming in, so many economies or companies have been closed. So I think it's difficult. Like I'm sure everyone remembers when, everyone was making a mad dash for toilet paper and stuff, right? So it's not readily available, right? So and then when something's not readily available, so of course the price will go up. But I wouldn't blame the Liberal government for that. I think the prices going up is just a matter of because of the pandemic, so many companies had to close, production halted. So personally, I don't blame them for that one.
Okay, Cece?
Yeah, I'm not convinced to blame the Liberal. Like in this case, they're empowered and in charge during the pandemic. I don't know if any other party could have done a better job or sometimes like maybe a worse job in this situation. So I don't think it's right to blame the one who had made the decision. And at least for now, I think they have made a lot of good decisions during the pandemic.
Antonio?
No, I mean, I wouldn't blame the Liberals directly for this, and I hate, and I don't like blame, encompassing everything on just this last 18 months, whatever the pandemic, because inflation's been happening for a number of years in this country, right? It's not just the last 2 years that things have, getting pricing out of control. I mean, are they to blame for directly with fuel? Sure, they have their policies definitely are ones that influence things between the carbon tax, between leather-hated pipelines and or domestic production of fuel instead of sourcing it from other countries and stuff like that. We do, we have. I mean, I'm a proponent of environment. I own an electric car and stuff like that. So it's not like, I'm saying, I'm like raw like pipelines and, and oil and stuff like that. But I mean, but there has to be a balance between the basically the trying to beat people into submission by increasing the taxes on fuel and whatnot that do play a part in the inflation of that aspect. But I mean, inflation overall it's realistically our global environment that's happened over the last 15 years, like the global climate of trade. And I mean, I work at the docks. My job depends on global trade, of goods coming in. So I'm not poo-hooing on global trade, but the globalism of factories somewhere else and just and conglomeration of large corporations is probably a bigger thing because they keep on wanting a bigger slice of profit. Kind of goes back to the last comment about wages. Yes, small businesses owners have a more difficult time, but there's a lot of large corporations. I mean, just recently I read it here in Burnaby, the largest increase in value was a shareholder company was Canadian Tire, right? They own Canadian Tire, Sports Check, Parties. They own all these companies. And they made, record profits and whatnot. And, they source their stuff from wherever around the world. I'm pretty sure those CEOs, those things that causing those prices to go up, they could take instead of, their giant salaries, they could take a little less and the employees could get a little more. And it wouldn't affect the bottom line, right? There could be businesses and stuff like that. Instead of automating tellers and stuff like that, so I think inflation is a larger thing than just this government and just this pandemic. I think we need to keep that in mind, right? So,
cool. I want to move on now and have some fun. And for me, fun is getting your opinions about the leaders. Let's start with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. If you were meeting somebody from another country and they didn't know anything about Justin Trudeau, how would you describe him to them?
Oh, okay. I thought I lost this for a second. You put some content up. For me, I mean, he's with that picture, I would say a little bit smug, but I'd say somebody he's young, somewhat charismatic. A bit conceited, maybe, with his, that his opinion seems to be always the right one.
Okay. Anybody else? How would you describe Prime Minister Trudeau to people?
I would think he probably would have to limit his family in a better way because of those scandals. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. So one public speech would have got paid whatever $1 million. So for a leader who has family, has something like that, which to me is not clean. So I would like to see a leader who is clean money-wise.
Okay. Who else must take a shot at describing Justin Trudeau to a person that's never heard of him before? Jane.
I would add on to what Antonio said. I also think he's empathetic, and he's the most supportive of women's rights of any prime minister that I've seen in my lifetime, and that's very important to me.
I would also agree with Jane. I think he does stand up for a lot of, he's talked a lot about women's rights and he's supportive of them. And I describe him as young, somewhat handsome. So
I would say, as far as Trudeau goes, he's the most vocal about minority rights of any prime minister we've ever had. Yeah. He is being bold and brave about it. And a lot of people would disagree with me, but I can't think of a single prime minister in recent memory who has talked about Indigenous rights or women's rights or any local minorities and how they can move forward and make Canada even better than it already is.
Mm-hmm. I have a different view regarding this because I am a Chinese. Originally, I'm from China. And what happened to this community is we do have some, like there's a story spread so widely in the Chinese community, which is a little girl who was killed in Central Park in Burnaby. And Justin Trudeau didn't talk a word about that tragedy. However, he did speak without any hesitation about the incidents where eventually was proved is a lie. So somebody cut somebody's hijabi something. Eventually, it turns out to be a lie. And he jumped out and talked the first time. First like minutes or second in such a short time without even an investigation. But for that tragedy happened to the little girl who was killed actually by a refugee, he talked nothing. To us, it's heartbroken. So I wouldn't agree that he cares about a minority, but he cares about his ballot instead. He can show him up in those Chinese New Year to those malls and then join the Chinese celebration. But in the reality, where we want to hear a leader to condemn such a crime, nothing. We didn't see anything.
I recall that story, and it is tragic and awful. It just, at the same time, and not to pull away from it and to say it isn't Trudeau's fault or something should have been said or not have said. If it's an ongoing investigation at the time, it would be prudent of any particular person to not make any comments until something has concluded. And I'm not to draw away from it at all. It's incredibly important that it is talked about. But if it's one of those things where he says something and later on something else comes out about it, then he misspoke, how would that look?
Well, then he did misspoke.
Okay.
Right?
Dragon, I want to hear your perspective. Mm-hmm. Dragon, tell me about Justin Trudeau.
Well, he's a very still young man, charismatic. So it's a bit better cliche. But anyways, I will describe him. He is a prime minister who welcomes new immigrants. But I think he should be taking care of of this around all people in Canada first. Before I understand, I'm for immigrants too. But my opinion, we should be taking care of our people in Canada because we have a lot of people who live in poverty in Canada from coast to coast, from Vancouver to Halifax. And that's how I will describe him to my friend from outside of Canada. He's welcoming immigrants, but I will let my friends, whoever I'm speaking to, that Canada should be taking people, care of our own people first. And then, once we take care of our own people, create more jobs, then we can welcome more immigrants to this country.
Okay, so give me some more flavor about Justin Trudeau now, and tell me what you either really like about him or really don't like about him. What sticks out for you in either a positive or a negative way? Not so much in a policy sense about what he does from policy, but what he's like.
Well, David, when he's asked questions, he doesn't answer some of the questions directly. He moves on, when the media ask him some questions, he just ignores and they have to repeatedly ask him. So kind of find it arrogant in that case. She should be answered every single question. He's our prime minister. He should be not just ignore and move to a new question. Yes. That's
Jane?
my opinion about him.
Yeah,
Thanks, Draggy.
when he first got elected as the head of the Liberal Party, I kind of went, oh no, because I did find him to be really cocky and arrogant at first. And I have to say, he's done a lot better than I expected. And he has shown his vulnerability on a number of occasions. And I really do think that he wants the best for, the good of the people. And I think he's tried really hard and avoided playing politics a lot of the time, which I prefer. I prefer a leader that's actively working on making things better and not getting twisted around in a big political drama. So, I've actually been quite impressed by him. I think he's showed who he is. And he's globally, like on the international stage, I think he's quite well respected. So, and that's very important for us as a country.
Tara?
I would say very visible would be more so than I remember some of the other politicians. And maybe it's just because of COVID and the need for more communication from the government. But
is that a good thing, Tara?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? What do you like or dislike about Justin Trudeau? What sticks out about Justin Trudeau for you, Antonio?
I mean, I'd say being, someone, guy, he seems on a personal level, take away the political side of it. Like he said that he seems to care about Indigenous and women's rights. If we take aside the policy and the fact that they, haven't done anything for Indigenous people realistically as a government, him as a person himself, he seems to, from his past things is, having a tattoo that he has with Indigenous stuff, it seems like he is someone who does have a personal belief in some of these things. He's made mistakes. I think too many people get chastised over things they did that were appropriate 15, 20 years ago that were, in all walks of life that this happens. People did something 15, 20 years ago that was unacceptable, either whether a comedian that makes a joke or something happens that was normal to do back then. People get chastised over it. I think that what I don't like is he's, because of, you have to take a little bit of the policy. He seems a bit disingenuous now because there really has been no movement to, say improve water supply to Indigenous communities that don't even have clean, fresh water supplies. And like the Dragon said, taking care of our own country and stuff like that. Those are things that, again, I know it's a policy, you're asking for a personal view of him, but it makes him seem disingenuous on a personal level that he says he cares about women's rights and Indigenous rights. And then, they fire, an Indigenous woman out of the caucus and stuff like that. Right. So those two things don't, make him look disingenuous.
TC.
Yeah, aside from politics, I think my impression for Justin Trudeau has been mostly positive. I think he's decisive, especially shown during the pandemic. He was able to move a lot of agenda items and like pretty quickly, right? Like the some minimum income and some benefits for people who lost their job during the pandemic. So from that perspective, like just judging from very recent events, it's mostly positive. And I think he's also well respected and representing Canada very well and the international kind of stage there. So for those reasons, it's mostly positive at a personal level.
Sony?
I think I agree with CC. I think on a personal level, I do think he's done well. He's well respected. I think some of the things he's demonstrated with his caucus, he has a lot of minorities in his caucus, has a lot of women. So I think a lot of things that he's kind of talked about and that are important, he's kind of proven what he's kind of backed it up by hiring women, hiring minorities. So it kind of better represents what Canada is.
All right. Let's move on to our next leader. And I want to ask you this question, and I don't want you to say the name. Just want you to raise your hand if you feel confident you know who the leader of the Conservative Party is.
Do you mean other than the name?
Yeah, don't say the name of the leader, but I want you to signal to me that you know what the name of the leader of the Conservative Party is. Okay. Let's show the picture.
We're not seeing it yet. Oh, coming.
Okay, who recognizes that person? Cece, what is that person's name?
No, I don't recognize that person. I didn't put my hands up.
It was Sonny.
Aaron O'Toole.
Aaron O'Toole. Now that the name has been said, how many people have heard the words Aaron O'Toole before in their lives? Okay. So, who that has heard of him would like to take a crack at describing him again to a friend who's never heard of him before? Say you're talking to Cece. How would you describe him to Cece? Anybody? Describe Aaron O'Toole.
Honestly, I've heard him talk and stuff, but I don't know him very well. I honestly don't know much about him, about his, I know his stance a little bit on stuff, but I couldn't describe who he is other than the picture that he's, middle-aged white male. I mean,
Dragon, you're thinking about voting Conservative. Who is this guy?
Yeah. Well, David, just like Antonio said, he's a middle-aged man. Not many people in Canada know about this guy. He's trying to win some votes, from Canadians. But I think more people, including me, know way more about NDP leader, which I don't want to mention the name, or I can mention it. It's up to you, David. Then they know about Aaron O'Toole in Canada. I think that more people know about the NDP federal leader right now. So he's a middle-aged man, a Caucasian that needs more exposure, so people can learn more about him. So I don't think Canadians know much about him. And for now, he has slim chances of winning. So he has to expose himself way more, travel and be there so Canadians can learn more about him. That's how I'll describe him for now.
Okay, Jane?
What I do know about him is he has a military past. I haven't heard about him before he got elected leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. I hadn't heard of him really in politics. I think he's argumentative and shallow, and he picks ridiculous fights. He wastes the time, the legislature's time. He seems very interested in his self-image. I would call him a dandy. Yes. His leanings are quite right, to the right of the political spectrum. So I don't agree with a lot of his policies. When you're talking about changing the abortion laws and things like that, I have a really tough time with that. And also he's doing the negative advertising thing. I mean, he was super critical of Prime Minister Trudeau's response to the virus and to the pandemic. And ridiculously so, because I think Trudeau did an excellent job and a much better job. That was my parrot.
That doesn't happen in every focus group. I just want you all to know.
Yes.
You can't expect that if you do another one of these.
Yes, sorry. I think when Justin Trudeau was doing the job of dealing with the pandemic, which is something you don't expect. It's something that took a lot of people by surprise, and is, a deadly pandemic. It's a huge issue. And I think that Justin Trudeau was very quick to get orders in for vaccines to cover the population. And he was very quick to get financial assistance to businesses and to workers. And the little, the back talk from the NDP and the Conservative Party at that time really turned me off. I think I would have preferred if they had supported the efforts. So I see Aaron O'Toole. I don't think he's got strong leadership skills. I don't think he's right for Prime Minister of the country. Oh, did I lose you?
No, he's on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself. I'm such a professional that I muted myself.
Yeah.
You are, again, considering voting Conservative.
I said I don't vote Liberal, but I said for the rest, I would look into their policy instead of make a mind now.
Right. So are you interested in this man?
I think I don't know this person, but definitely I would, with the campaign goes on, I think I will hear more and more about him. And also I can do my own research just to find out what his policy is, what is his personality, and whether he would be a good leader or not. So that is definitely leave to me for a research myself.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to say about him?
Yeah, just as we're talking, as Jim was talking, I did remember one thing that he did come out with, and the only, something positive to say about somebody is he did denounce the far right of the Conservative Party. So, he did denounce that, kind of not linking to that, I hate using the word, but Trumpism kind of like side of a conservative viewpoint, like that really far right. So, I'm not, a fan of Conservative Party and policies, and I don't know much about this man, but I do remember him when he first came out. He did denounce the far right of the thing, which was at least a positive thing to me, that someone would say, no, like that's not the type of conservatives we want in this party. So it's a good change compared to an American style. So
okay, for those of you who, based on whatever information you have, or what do you think he might be better at than Trudeau? What would be a thing that he might be better at than Trudeau?
I think, sorry.
No, go ahead, Sonny.
I think maybe one thing I think he could be different at just pushing his own agenda farther. Like just kind of, pushing it so more and more people kind of listen to him. I haven't listened to him much, but I do find him a little bit of a loudmouth. So I think just, kind of talking over people, or just, raising the issues more, not necessarily making them true or making them better, but just forwarding or passing along his agenda.
Okay. Anybody else got a guess? What might this guy be better at than Trudeau?
Probably building pipelines.
Yeah.
Which I, for the record, don't think we need.
Right. Okay, so let's go on to our next leader. And no picture yet, my folks. How many people feel confident that they know who the leader of the NDP is? Put your hand up if you feel confident you know who the leader of the NDP is. Okay. So, Cece, who is it?
I didn't put my hands up again. Is that supposed to be a test or something?
Exactly. Tara, who is it?
If I say it properly, Jagmeet Singh.
There you go. Jagmeet Singh. Now, Cece, have you heard that name before?
Not top of my head. I can't recall.
E, have you heard Jagmeet Singh?
I think I should have heard that, but it wasn't like deep in my mind.
Okay, let's see a picture.
Nice picture.
Beautiful. We look fantastic.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I have seen this picture before.
Now I recognize this guy. I recognize his face, but not the name.
Right.
And
Okay.
it seems like he recently got a new baby.
Yeah.
I think they announced they're expecting.
Pregnant.
They
Yeah.
announced that they're expecting. Yeah. Okay. Antonio,
Yes.
describe Jagmeet Singh.
Well, I mean, I'll have to say I have a little bit of a thing because I actually met the man. So I've actually shook hands and met the man, which was nice. He's very, very personable. Very, and he's also very charismatic, very passionate, very polite and down to earth. That's, I can say all those things having actually met him in a setting before and had a brief, albeit brief conversation with the man.
Right. Daryl.
I also have met him. Ironic. That's 2 for 2. He's very, very personable. I agree with a lot of his public policy ideas, and I really appreciate that he is really for the small to medium type family, like all of the lower and middle class people. He's all about, let's get social things in place. Let's help with, everybody deserves dental. Why is it not covered, kind of thing, right? That's a huge deal.
Okay. Tara, tell us about Jagmeet Singh.
I never met him, so I can't say that. But I do see, based on what I see on TV, he always seems, I agree with the charismatic, friendly. I do also think of him as being very aware of the little person and the struggles that many Canadians go through, and see him as somebody that cares about those people.
Dragon.
Well,
lean forward if you could. Yep.
Although I have not met David, I also find him, I know this guy for years. He had replaced late Jack Layton that I was voting in the past. But I find him to be charismatic, and it's actually my first choice for now, to become a future prime minister. But he's very, I like the guy. He seems to be, understand the middle class, and also he's been talking about healthcare and including the dental, that I think every single Canadian should be, eligible. It's a shame that we live in such one of the richest country that we don't have dental benefits. It's a shame. So I hopefully, they can, whoever gets elected, hopefully they will provide this dental assistance to many Canadians who are working Canadians who don't get coverage. They have to pay from their own pocket. So that's how I will describe Jagmeet Singh.
Jane?
Yeah, like I was saying, ideologically, I'm NDP. So I do agree with a lot of the policies. As a leader, however, I was when he first took over, I was very hopeful, and I just don't think he's as strong a leader as Jack Layton was. I think the NDP had the best chance federally with Jack Layton. I find sometimes Jagmeet turns to the attack too much instead of talking positive policy. When he starts attacking Trudeau, it comes across as some of his statements come across as a little immature. So that concerns me, especially on a world stage as a prime minister. I'm expecting someone to be much more collected and mature in their approach.
How would you compare him, thinking in terms of prime minister, how would you compare him to Trudeau? Would he be better or worse than Trudeau as prime minister, and why?
Well, I think, at first, like I said, I was really unsure of Trudeau, but I think he took to the role very well. There's certain things you expect from a prime minister on a world stage, and he's shown his ability to negotiate with bigger nations and put us back on track with the United Nations. In having some kind of say in things. I think he's very composed. And he's very careful about how he talks about things. I know sometimes he's criticized for that, but when you have a leader in such a public role, you do expect that calm, mature demeanor. So I think that's something that Jagmeet could potentially have in the future. I think he seems, I might be wrong, but I've known about Justin Trudeau in politics for a lot longer. So I think over time, I would like to see Jagmeet mature to that level. And I'm hopeful in the future that he might make a good federal leader. At this point, I don't think he's quite ready.
Okay, somebody else compare him to Trudeau in terms of who would be a better prime minister.
If I had to compare, I think that he has the potential to be one of the great prime ministers of Canada. The problem is that when you have opposition governments, it's not one person makes the policy for the entire country. It'll go to a vote and it becomes, Aaron O'Toole will get in there and start knocking things down and making noise. And it just doesn't happen, right? You can say Trudeau has broken a lot of promises that he made in his campaign. They all end up doing that. It kind of it breaks down to votes, right? Or there could be other underlying reasons why a policy doesn't happen. For example, real quick, Antonio mentioned the clean drinking water for natives, for the Indigenous people. I know for a fact there's some places in Northern Ontario that have never had clean drinking water. And what people don't know is that the water was contaminated by fracking years ago, right? So it can't be made clean, right? Not without billions of dollars of investing. There's one simple example. It's not always the case.
Tony, do you have a sense of who would be a better prime minister, Jagmeet Singh or Justin Trudeau?
I think I've read Jagmeet's book and I did meet him, so that's 3 for 3 now. So I read his book. I like the fact with Jagmeet Singh is I like how, like with Trudeau, he's grown up around politics, right? He like with his father, his family, but with Jagmeet Singh, I think I like the fact that how he's grown up. Like his parents were immigrants, the schooling system. He kind of went through a lot of the challenges that a lot of people go through. So I think with that perspective, hopefully as a leader, he would use that perspective or his experiences to help change, the policies or the social circumstances for a lot of people.
Okay, this has been so interesting. I just have one more question before we wrap up for today. My question is that on the eve of this election, Prime Minister Trudeau announced that the government was going to make double vaccinations mandatory for all public servants and mandatory for anybody who travels by plane or train in Canada. And the Conservatives and Aaron O'Toole said that while they encourage vaccination, they think that vaccination is a personal choice protected by the Charter of Rights, and they're not going to force it on people. Which of those positions is correct? Which one of those do you agree with, Antonio?
I'd have to say I agree with Aaron O'Toole on this. I think forcing medical procedure in any avenue is wrong, right? I don't think that forcing, especially even with something like this, that between a vaccinated and non-vaccinated person, that the viral load can be carried almost the same. The CT load is almost identical. And so forcing a medical procedure that, that's we'll need boosters, shots, whatever is wrong. I mean, I'm in a federally regulated industry. We have a lot of people who are for or against vax, whatever. I'm not pro or, I'm not anti-vax, whatever, stuff like that, but I'm pro-choice, whether it's pro-choice with a woman's body, pro-choice with your own with something like that. So I think forcing anything is not right.
Okay. Tara?
So I am with Trudeau with this one, stemming back to looking even children going to school. They are required vaccines. Most people have had them. Yes, you can get exemptions, and yes, it's pretty easy to do so. But I think that will happen with this vaccine as well. But they are supposed to go through those childhood vaccinations in order to enter the public school system.
British Columbia. So.
Oh, really?
No, you actually have to have an exemption card for that. I know that one as fact.
I have children in school, and I know I have friends who have children who have no vaccinations for their children in school systems here in Burnaby and British Columbia. And they want you to sign up, but you do not have to get any sort of actual physical exemption card to be in public schools in British Columbia. They do request your immunization records, but it's not just, sorry to cut you off, Tara, but I just, okay. When there's a information that's not factual, or that doesn't apply here, I'd like to just
Cece, who's got the right position here, Trudeau or Trudeau?
Thinking about what makes us different than where I came from in China, the government says one thing, the public cannot say no to it. So just knowing that what's differentiate Canada from where I came from, I'm in favor of not forcing it, making a rule. However, I do see the benefit of the majority having vaccinated. So there are tactics the governments can do, or even the employer can do, to encourage and as well as incentivize people to take the vaccine if it's the right choice for them. But I do think there should be exemption options for people who are not, for whatever reason, health, personal, religious reason, that they may not want to take the vaccine.
Okay, Dragon, Trudeau says if you want to work for the federal government, if you want to get on a plane or if you want to get on a train, you better be vaccinated. And O'Toole says, no, that's a personal choice. What's your point of view?
Yeah, I agree with that. O'Toole, nobody, just like Antonio said, nobody should be forced to get vaccinated. However, with the mask, I think everybody should be wearing masks for now until this COVID virus gets completely eliminated. But regarding vaccinated, even people working for the federal government, nobody should be forced to vaccinate. That's my opinion. So I agree with Erin O'Toole, even though I don't know much about this future leader.
Anybody else got an opinion about this they want to share? Jane? Go ahead, E. You're there first. Yeah.
I got my 2 vaccine already. So I would receive the vaccine. However, I don't agree that you can force anyone to do anything to their bodies. That's their autonomy. So your body is yours. You make a decision. However, I do give you knowledge and I do give you education. Then you are making informed consent. You understand, then you take the responsibility. So that's my point of view. I don't like Cece says, I come from China, so I don't like the government tells me to do what, I cannot say no.
And I just change my thing a little bit. I'm not saying that we have to vaccinate everybody. I'm saying that I agree if you want to fly or whatnot, you make that choice yourself. So you can get vaccinated or you can't, but when you're entering the public places, then that becomes a different issue. That's your own choice that way, right?
Okay, Jane?
That's what I was going to say is there is still choice. Mm-hmm. I do actually agree with the mandatory vaccination for travelers. I work in healthcare and I can see what happens with these viral outbreaks. I used to work in epidemiology for the BC Centre for Disease Control. So doing pneumococcal and influenza vaccine studies. So I have probably a little better understanding than the general public. I know these vaccines are safe. I know that they've been tested by the people that I used to work with personally in that department. And I know that they're necessary. That's the only way we're going to stop this pandemic or control it to any degree. So I'm absolutely in favor of mandatory vaccines for air travel. And I actually commend Trudeau for taking a strong step in that direction. You're on mute again, I think.
Thanks for helping me. My job. Daryl and Sony, we didn't hear from you. Do you not have a strong opinion, or?
I agree with O'Toole on it's entirely your choice to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. I work with a lot of people in my office, and we've all been double vaccinated for our own choices. But at the same time, if airlines say you're not getting on without that double vaccination, then you're not getting on. Yeah. It's that simple. It's the same as the cruise ships. There's just another case. People get sick on the cruise ships. Why is anybody getting on there, right? If you aren't vaccinated, I don't want to say you shouldn't be out in public, but you shouldn't be out in public. It's not safe for you.
Tony, any thought?
I'm on the fence with this one. I agree with Justin Trudeau because I do believe that getting more and more people vaccinated will hopefully eventually end this. But at the same time, I agree with O'Toole that I think no one should be forced to do something that they're not comfortable with. Like if you don't want to get vaccinated, you shouldn't be forced. Yes, maybe you'll be able to do less stuff. Like maybe you can't board a plane, but at least you know it's your choice.
Hi, and thanks for joining the first of our weekly focus groups throughout election 2021. We recruited participants from swing ridings in 2 locations in Canada, the Lower Mainland of British Columbia and the 905 region of Ontario. These are 2 of the places where this election will be determined, and we wanted to hear from voters who are going to make the difference in this race. I think what we heard today was really interesting. The election is on and people know it, and they have opinions about what it ought to be about. Maybe the parties don't have solutions. Think of housing. Aaron O'Toole clearly has a job to introduce himself to Canadians. Even people that are thinking about voting Conservative don't have much of an idea of who he is or what he's about. Jagmeet Singh, on the other hand, has clearly made a very positive impression. Certainly everybody who meets him, and we found a few of them, thinks very highly of him. And even people who aren't voting for him right now think he's got potential to lead the country in the future. So this is going to be an exciting race. I didn't hear in the focus groups today the foundations of a slam dunk re-election for the government. I heard the foundations of a vigorous debate and a vigorous contest, and I think that's what we're in for. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'd like to thank our participants for being part of it. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Telus, and tune in next week when we'll be looking at some of the advertising the parties are doing and some of the platform initiatives that they have announced. See you next week.